Awesome. Okay, so flight to the finish. So remember they're doing like the Equestria Games, right? And the Equestria Games are going to be in the Crystal Empire, and it's going to be the coolest thing ever. And so the director of the games, or the important lady, she comes over to Ponyville, and she comes to the school. And at the school, she says, "Hey, we want the kids to one of the teams at the school. They're going to get to perform on the stage at the game, and they're going to have the chance to introduce Ponyville when the athletes come on." And so everyone gets in groups, and they want to win this cool prize because it's like the coolest thing ever, right? And so you've got a couple of the normal kids, the normal groups. But what's cool is there's a CMC, and then there's Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon. And the Cutie Mark Crusaders really, really, really want to win this. And so they go super hard, and they make this awesome routine in a couple of days after the director came by, and they just did a really cool job. And what they did is they got Rainbow Dash as their coach, right? So they said, "Rainbow Dash, would you watch us perform and tell us what you think and help us improve?" And so they work on this for days and days and days, and then they get to an end result. They get to a final product, and they show it off on the stage. They perform, and it's really, really, really good. They do an amazing job. And Silver Spoon and Diamond Tiara, they see these guys do an amazing job. They're like, "Holy crap, that's really good." And Rainbow Dash, she's the exact same thing. She's like, "Oh my God, this is awesome. You guys did an amazing job." But she doesn't say that, and that's the problem. See, she wants them to perform at their peak potential, right? She wants them to go 100,000% and make it to that last little bit that they have left. But the problem is that in order to do that, she makes the worst decision possible. So you want to make sure, in any situation, you are ridiculously generous with your praise, and you want to give out praise so much, because praise and happiness and positivity, if she just said this was the best thing ever and they did amazing, she's worried that they'll stop practicing. But there's no way they'll stop practicing. They'll keep going on the same routine, trying to make it better and better and better, because if they get praised, they'll feel so great about themselves, especially because Rainbow Dash is a source of authority for them. But she doesn't. Instead, she holds back praise. She holds back accommodation. She holds back appreciation, and doesn't say how amazing and tremendous that this performance was. And instead, she says, "Oh, it was okay," which is ridiculous. And so what's that do? Well, it plants seeds of self-doubt inside all these threes' heads. And they feel terrible about themselves now, because they tried so hard, and they put on one of the best performances ever. Their mentor, Rainbow Dash, just said, "Oh, it's okay." And she made them feel awful about what they've been doing, and their positions and their work that they've been trying so hard on, because she was not lavish. So make sure, in any situation, you always want to give tons and tons of praise, even if it's unwarranted. Just be happy and give people praise, because it will make them work so much better, and you will drastically increase your output automatically by simply giving tons of praise in any situation possible. The Cutie Mark Crusade. So Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon, they see this, they come over, and they say, "Wow, what a bad performance. I can't believe it. You're going to have to change everything." Even though they know that this was the freaking best performance on the planet, they want to win this for themselves, right? So if you have your competitors telling you how bad you are, you might want to think that they have alternative motives, and they actually want to win for themselves instead of just trying to be constructively helping you. Which is why, a vast majority of the time, you want to minimize constructive criticism and negativity and suggestions if at all possible, and focus exclusively on praising the things that they do right. Because if you just praise what gets done right, all of a sudden they perform better and better with their strengths, and the weaknesses just stay at the same level, or they fade away, because they're overshadowed by the immense strengths of the actual performance. So that's the goal, right? That's what you want to focus on. You want to focus on the strengths. Which is obviously not what happens here. So these guys say, "You're terrible, you've got to do everything over again, it's awful." And because of the doubt that was placed in their mind by a lack of enthusiasm and a lack of praise, they pretty much buy this crap, and they say, "Oh, well, I guess I'll have to start over." And then similarly, she kind of faces something. Okay, cool. And so they all go home and they're trying to like plan everything again and do totally different parts and trying to do, flying and things that just don't make any sense. And so basically they kind of like just destroy their performance, and it's just awful because they just didn't have enough praise and they had the wrong direction, the wrong path. And these guys gave them a very, very, very bad idea to work with and said, hey, you should work with this. So they go home and they practice and they practice and they practice, and then they get up on the stage again and they do the same, or not the same, they do a new performance, and the new performance like flops, it bombs, it's really, really bad. And now everyone's sad about it, and they lose all of their self-confidence and they lose all of their progress that they made. It just gets destroyed. And so the people at the school, they are just done, right? And so they really, really, really try their best, but they were doing the wrong routine. They were following the wrong set of instructions. They can only do what they know, and what they knew was awful. And so they decide to drop out, and they lose. And so train leaves, and they're going to the games, and everyone's going to the games to audition and compete. And as everybody leaves on this train to go over to this competition to compete and to apply for the team position, these guys stay at home. And Rainbow Dash sees them staying at home, and she says, what are you guys doing? You guys were amazing. It was the best ever. And only at this point does she finally give all the praise and all the recognition that they really deserve. And then they say, well, we thought you hated it, and we thought it was bad, and so we didn't do it. And so she makes them go back to the original routine and what they were doing the first time, when she should have been lavish with her praise, but she wasn't. And then they take this original routine and this newfound inspiration from their mentor. They go here and they absolutely crush the audition and win the opportunity to do the introduction for the town. Solely because they had inspiration from positivity and praise. You can never, never, ever have enough positivity or praise, especially if it's genuine. And so you always, always want to give it out, and give out an abundance of it to inspire others to be the best they can be. And never withhold it, thinking that others will perform better if you don't tell them how amazing they are. You always want to tell them how amazing they are. Power ponies! Woo! Oh, this one's fun. So these guys are in the castle again. They're in like this castle in the middle of the woods. And they're all together this time, so they're not isolated anymore. And they're cleaning up and they're getting materials and just making everything look nice. And Spike's sitting here reading like a comic book from some enchanted comic book store. And everyone gets around Spike and they're like, hey, let's go eat lunch or something. We're going to have a good time. He's like, okay, cool, sounds good. Let me finish this. And so he finishes up like the last page of his comic book. And there's like this little inscription on the inside. And the inscription has like some kind of like spell magic thing. And so he reads out this inscription. And then all of a sudden this comic book just starts to like suck him inside of it, which is just like the weirdest thing ever. So like he starts to get sucked inside of it. So Twilight grabs his arm, and then Fluttershy grabs Twilight, and then Pinkie Pie grabs Fluttershy. Everybody just grabs each other's hands and daisy chains, because they basically like all get sucked into this comic book as they try to save each other. So a couple things, like just like before we get into like what actually happens. That's so cool, right? Like these guys had such a strong connection with one another that they were willing to risk their life and go into the unknown just to try to grab each other's hands and save each other. That shows really how deep this connection is. I mean, who else would you like jump into a comic book to try to save? I mean, just insane what happens here. And that's really a testament to the strength of this mastermind and this relationship. So, they get in this comic book world. And basically, like, everyone just becomes one of the superheroes from the comic book. And they all get, like, these cool powers and these cool little, like, costumes. And they have a good time. And then Spike is, like, this, like, little assistant guy. And, see, the problem is, like, Spike, he feels really insignificant because, again, he's, like, always kind of serving Twilight. And he's just kind of, like, an assistant. And so as they enter the building, and they're in this newfound city in like the middle of the comic book, and they're standing on this building, and Spike is just like, everyone else has powers and can do like the coolest things ever, except for Spike. So Spike just kind of like has a cape, and there's this big like main pony that is just like wrecking up the town. She's like the big evil villain in the comic book, and she like wants to destroy everybody and crush the town and end the world, all that good stuff. And so these guys go and they start to fight her, like with their powers and like making tornadoes and just like using all these cool powers that they get, which is like awesome, right? And as they're fighting her, as they're trying to like just destroy her or whatever, they gotta get. She has like 50 people that just like follow her around and try to kill people, and so like all these guys like fight them, and then they have this huge battle, and essentially what happens is the main six, they kind of like get like frozen. So she has like this hairspray thing, and if she sprays you with it, you like freeze, I guess. So she like just sprays them with that, and then they all get frozen. And then she puts them all inside this huge cage, which is like pretty intense. So they can't really remove, and they can't use their magic or anything like that. Even though there was like a pretty sweet battle, they eventually lose at the end, which sucks. Except for one person, right? And that's Spike. So Spike doesn't have any powers, and so she doesn't like waste her time trying to isolate Spike. She just lets Spike, chill out, and she doesn't worry about him because he doesn't have any powers. And she underestimates one of the key members of this team, one of the key members of this group, and just lets him roam around, lets him go free, because she doesn't see him as a threat, which is like ridiculous, right? But what it does is it opens up a path for the rest of the story for him to come and save his friends and overcome his internal feelings of, self-deficiencies, right? Because he doesn't think he's important. He doesn't think that he's contributing to the group, because he's always like some kind of assistant, right? And so this is like his chance to be something and do something and have a feeling of importance that will last throughout his life, right? He has a feeling of significance. He just doesn't have that right now. And so these guys take this big cage inside, and they come into this huge evil lair, and there's like this huge like death ray cannon that they built, and so they're getting ready to fire this like death ray cannon on the entire city and like kill everybody, or freeze everybody, whatever, right? Give everybody bad hair, whatever. And so there's like a bunch of hench ponies everywhere, and they're just like they just like keep spraying these guys so that they can't move, and then they're just patrolling the area. And so what Spike does is he kind of like comes in through the air vents and the ducts of the building and starts crawling through the ventilation system so that he can get to his friends and free them. And as he's crawling through these vents, he peers inside, and he can like hear everybody talking. And the main six are here, and they say Spike will come and he'll save us because he's the best ever. And we trust him, and we believe in him, and we know he is valiant and truthful and will be strong and push through. And Spike hears that, and he's like super cool. And then, the evil lady, she says, oh, Spike is nothing. He doesn't have any powers. He's a loser. He can't win anything. And he'll never equate to anything because of his physical position in the world. Not his emotional connections, not his social connections, but just because he doesn't have the physical ability to do some of the magic, powery things that you guys do. And so what they do is like, he is completely separated on a physical level from his friends, but he has an extremely strong emotional connection, and these social connections outweigh any physical inequalities, indifferences, or challenges that he faces, because he knows that as a team they work together and are significantly stronger than any one person could be on their own. And so to show that, he busts out of this air duct, and then slaps the hairspray thing away from the people. And then these guys get free, and they break out of the cage. And then there's this ginormous battle, and everyone gets like exploded. And they kill all the people, and they take her under control and save the city and get rid of destroy the death ray. And everybody, lives happily ever after, and they have the best day ever. And what's cool is like that only happens because Spike gets underestimated because of his physical demeanor, where he can come and save everybody because of the power of these emotional connections, which stem past and they grow greater than the actual underlying physical connection and like state of being, and make him a significantly greater power to be reckoned with, because he has this mastermind, and these guys are so much stronger as a group than they could ever be alone, which is just insane and so powerful. And it gives Spike that renewed sense of confidence that like his friends do need him, and he is important, and he will have an impact on the world around him. And that's pretty much exactly what happens. And that sense of achievement, comes back into the real world. Now he feels amazing, and he gets rid of all feelings of self-doubt, all feelings of self-pity. You have to destroy negativity, destroy fear, destroy any ideas you have that go against you being the most successful and important person on the planet. That's exactly what Spike does here, and it fundamentally shifts his everyday demeanor and makes him a super happy guy, because he knows he's important. Because he is important, and you're important, and everyone is important. You must be important to yourself. So, the key to life collaboration and growth. We talked about Principles by Ray Dalio earlier, but like it's just really, really, really good. That one's awesome. That's where you're going to really learn how to have this continuous growth over and over and over again. It's so powerful. And some awesome principles in there for management and team growth and developing teams and then building up those teams so that you can really have the best relationships possible while still being like transparent with everybody, and having the growth that keeps growing and growing and growing over challenges. And then the new 1 Minute Manager is also like ridiculously good. It's the same thing that we just talked about. So they do so much in positivity and growth and like giving tons of praise while eradicating hatred and eradicating criticism. It's just so powerful. And a really quick read, but a really, really powerful way to really increase that productivity, increase that connection in the mastermind, and increase the emotions that tie everyone together, so that you can increase your output while decreasing the amount of time that you spend managing people, which is just awesome. And then, more importantly, have overall happiness, joy, and praise spread out throughout the world in the office specifically, but also in your professional life, personal life, because of there's like some 3 secrets in here that are really, really, really good. So I would definitely recommend you guys snag those 2 books. They are amazing. And they are the key to total life collaboration and growth. Woo! Oh, this one's so fun! Oh, okay. Bats. Okay. Oh man, this is good. Okay. So Applejack, she harvests her apples, like, I don't know, she's just like always harvesting apples, I guess. And she's got a little bit of a problem. So I guess it's like October-ish, or near Halloween or something. And so it's like the leaves are changing, and there are a bunch of bats that are migrating from where they used to be over to like Applejack's farm, basically. So if we maybe draw a farm in green, please. So here's her huge farm, and there are trees everywhere, apples everywhere. And see, the problem is, like, Applejack is always harvesting all their apples, and she's trying to grow a really, really, really big apple this year for like the Appaloosa State Fair. And she wants to have like this massive apple that's like the size of like a person, basically, which is like super cool. And so she's really, really protective of her farm and her plants and her trees, because like she wants to have the biggest apple ever, and also she wants to have like a successful harvest with the apple trees, right? And so that's like exactly what she loves to do. But see, there are these vampire fruit bats. These vampire fruit bats, they come in to this place, and it's just ridiculously crazy. So vampire fruit bats come, and they're like eating all the apples, and they suck out all the juices, and then they just like spin them on the ground. And then I guess like when they spin them on the ground, the seeds like get replanted and they grow into new trees and stuff. But at the cost of doing that, I mean, it like destroys all the apples in the apple trees, which is like a problem, because that's her entire crop and that's what she lives on. And so because of that, she's trying to figure out a way to get rid of all these bats that came in, and get them out of her farm, right? Because they're just everywhere and they're eating all of it's just ridiculous. And so Applejack, she does what anyone should do, and she figures out who's an expert on animal relations, which is Fluttershy. And she tries to get Fluttershy to come over and fix this problem and see what the heck you think is going on and how can we solve this. So we're going to go through what Fluttershy says. Originally, she says that they need to like save the bats, and it's just so much better explained with this song.
Those vampire bats will give you a fright. eating apples both day and night. They rest for a minute, maybe 3, then they're eating every apple in your apple tree. They don't care about nada, not zilch, no nothing, except bringing about an orchard's destruction.
Now wait just a minute, there's another side to this. And if I did not defend them, then I would be remiss. These bats are mamas and papas too. They care for their young just like we ponies do.
Oh, give me a break, you're being too kind. These creatures have a one-track mind. The orchard is not their restaurant. But do they ever think what others may want? No, they don't. And that is just a fact. These bats, they simply don't know how to act.
That's where I have to disagree. They're loyal to their family, spreading seeds both far and wide.
You see one coming, you better run and hide. They're big and ugly and mean as sin. Will you look at the state my trees are in?
They help your trees, they'll grow stronger, faster.
They've turned my life to a total disaster.
Well, I for one don't have a doubt. These vermin must be stamped right out.
I second that, they've got to go. These bats, they've got to hit the road. It comes down to just one simple fact. They've crossed the line, it's time to fight them.
Stop the bats, stop the bats, make them go and not come back. Stop the bats, make them go and not come back. Stop the bats, make them go and not come back.
Yes, it comes down to just one simple fact. They've crossed the line, it's time that we attack.
Awesome. So, like, Fluttershy is like the only one who like sees their point of view and like actually looks at it from the view of the bats and says, hey, maybe we should like be nice to these guys and like let them live and survive and thrive and help the orchard grow. All in the idea of, you know, short-term loss for long-term gain, right? So they eat a couple of apples now, but then there's a ton more apple trees in the future. And she sees this long-term vision that no one else sees. And so just kind of a sidebar there, but that's really, you know, what's going on here. But nonetheless, they need apples, right? And so they need to like they're gonna like run out of money, so they need to like run their farm. And so everyone convinces Fluttershy that, look, you've got to, you know, get rid of these bats. And so she like they get all the bats in one place. They get all the bats together. And then how do they get all the bats together? Well, they have to get all the bats together so that Fluttershy can do her stare on the bats. And so what Applejack does is really, really cool. She slices open this ginormous apple that she was saving for the state fair, which is like the biggest sacrifice she could have ever made. She sacrifices, you know, winning the state fair. She sacrifices her pride, her ego, her chance of like success at the state fair with the biggest apple ever. She slices it right open so that all the fruit bats can come to the apple. So that Fluttershy can trance them all. So she's giving up, you know, her short-term loss for this long-term gain of, you know, getting rid of all the bats, right? And so that was what her plan was, and it was a tough decision to make, but she freaking, you know, she did it, which is awesome. And so that's how they get all the bats in one place. They get them all in front of Fluttershy, and then Fluttershy gives them the stare, and like, you know, gets them by using force basically to not eat any more of the apples. She gets them to like hate apples, which is like cool. I don't know. She's like really good with animals, so that's kind of her thing. The slight little problem that backfires is that like the bats, their instinct to eat the apples kind of like bounces back onto Fluttershy somehow, and so she starts to like physically transform into a bat. And so she gets like fangs, and then she becomes like this ginormous like vampire fruit bat. And she starts to like eat all the apples herself now. So there's no more bats, but now Fluttershy is just going around and eating all these apples, which is just ridiculous and crazy. And so like she's physically endangered because of like this act that she did for her friends, which no one knew about. No one thought that would happen, but it sucks, right? And so eventually the main six, they figure out what's going on, and they see Fluttershy and they find her and they say, whoa, okay, she's a bat, that's not good. And they realize that like they can't forcefully change the nature of these animals, and what they have to do is let them return to normal and just get them to naturally leave without taking any kind of like shortcut. You can't take that shortcut, and so because of that, that allows Fluttershy to come back to life, right? So she kind of reverses the process and gets the bats to take back their desires, so that Fluttershy can go back to normal and be who she really is. And then they just have to kind of like whisk the bats away and get them out a little bit of a slower way, but a much more effective way that has long-term success and allows them to succeed, because they take this short-term loss of having to do it the hard way, but then when they do it the hard way, they get their friend back, right? And that's what's more important. And then as they get their friend back, they're able to get rid of all these bats. But it was a tough situation, especially at the beginning, because it was like Fluttershy against the group with them trying to use force to get rid of all these bats, when sort of in reality this force kind of backfired and kind of was not the best method possible. They had to take it a more one-on-one stage, a more direct way, where they actually formed a connection with these bats and figured out what they wanted, which was just food, and then they found a way for them to fly away and get that, so that they wouldn't have to be at the core of the problem, and they didn't have to be like there for these guys over and over and over again. And so Fluttershy could go back to normal. She wouldn't have to be a bat, and then the bats would go and they would live their natural lives, the normal way, without being on the farm. So it's kind of just like earlier in season 1, where they had to get rid of all those like flying dot guy things, those little animals. Like it's the same thing here. Like you can't physically alter someone. You can't change. Like people don't change. Like you can't force somebody to change. And so by forcing them to change, it backfired, and they had to go and do it the right way afterwards, because you just cannot force them. The change has to come from themselves, and so that's exactly what they do here. And by having the change come from themselves, they save Fluttershy from being this evil bat, which is just terrible. And then they let the bats go back to normal. They go back to their normal lives, and they pursue their own careers and their own paths the way that they are supposed to. And then Fluttershy also more deeply connects with the main six in her primary social group, because now they have a much deeper respect for one another, now that they know that she has to use her powers carefully, to control animals, or it can backfire and seriously hurt her. And they care deeply about each other, right? So they do not want to hurt each other. And that's exactly why they let her go back to being normal and let all the bats come back, and then they have to get rid of them the normal way, because they care more about Fluttershy than they do about a couple of apples. Because she is key to the whole group's growth, and the whole group in the mastermind is the most important.